At exactly 2:47 hours on April 3, 2026, deep inside the mountain ranges of Iran's Kogiluya and Boyer Ahmad province, the night sky was split open by a streak of fire that no American war planner had anticipated. An F-15E Strike Eagle, serial markings bearing the red and white stripe of the 48th Fighter Wing out of RAF Lakenheath, United Kingdom, was caught mid-ingress by an Iranian surface-to-air engagement that the entire Pentagon had declared impossible. The aircraft shuddered, the airframe buckled, and in the rear cockpit, a weapons systems officer, a trained combat specialist with hundreds of flight hours, had less than 2 seconds to pull the ejection handle before the world went dark. This was not supposed to happen. This was the moment that broke every confident statement that had been made about American air dominance over Iran. And what followed over the next 36 hours would become one of the most extraordinary covert rescue operations in U.S. military history, executed not in silence but against the backdrop of a nation of 90 million people actively hunting for 2 American airmen. The war had already been grinding for 36 days. Operation Epic Fury, the joint U.S.-Israeli offensive against Iran, had leveled Iran's missile defense networks, eliminated much of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' senior command structure, and, in the most seismic geopolitical event since the fall of Saddam Hussein, killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in a precision strike during the opening 72 hours of the campaign. American officials had declared air superiority. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stated publicly that Iran's radar was 100% annihilated. President Trump told the nation from the Oval Office, "We literally have planes flying over Tehran and other parts of their country. They can't do a thing about it." Iran, it turned out, had been listening, and it had been preparing. At 02:31 hours, 16 minutes before the shootdown, a flight of F-15Es from the 492nd Fighter Squadron was tasked with a suppression of enemy air defense package over southern Tehran province. The mission had been prosecuted dozens of times before. It was, by all measures, a routine evolution. The aircraft ingressed at medium altitude, using the AN/APG-82V1 active electronically scanned array radar to paint the target zone while on board EWSP, electronic warfare self-protection suites, actively jammed known Iranian S-300 fire control frequencies. The crews had no reason to believe that night was different, but at 02:44 hours, something changed. The F-15E's radar warning receiver, the AN/ALR-56M, lit up with an entirely unknown electromagnetic signature. Not an S-300, not an S-400, a domestically produced Iranian system that the National Reconnaissance Office had no prior entry for in the JWICS threat library. It was a system that Iran's military spokesperson would later describe as being unveiled one after another in real operational conditions. The kill chain was already locked. The missile, later assessed by defense analysts as an upgraded version of Iran's Sayyad 4B long-range interceptor, had been fired from a mobile TEL hidden beneath a freeway overpass 30 kilometers south of Tehran, using terrain masking to deny any radar cross-section until the moment of engagement. Impact velocity, Mach 4.2. Reaction time available to the crew, 1.8 seconds. The pilot executed an immediate brake turn and dispensed a full salvo of ALE-47 countermeasures, flares and chaff detonating across the sky in a blinding wall of radar clutter. It wasn't enough. The warhead detonated inside the lethal radius of the Strike Eagle's starboard engine nacelle. The explosion tore through the hydraulic lines, severed the fly-by-wire connections to the stabilators, and engulfed the right engine in a catastrophic fire that could not be suppressed. The pilot had 3 seconds of control authority left. He used them to point the nose away from a populated valley below. Then both crew members pulled their Martin Baker Aces 2 ejection seats. At 02:47 hours, the F-15E Strike Eagle of the 48th Fighter Wing ceased to exist as a combat aircraft. The first crew member, the pilot, ejected within the survivable window. His parachute was tracked on thermal by an MQ-9 Reaper loitering overhead at 25,000 feet, feeding real-time IR imagery back to Combined Air Operations Center, Qatar. The extraction call went out immediately. 2 MH-60M Black Hawks from the 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers, were diverted from a standby orbit 40 nautical miles west. They were on deck within 19 minutes, inserting a JSO Sea Combat Control Team onto Iranian soil to secure the pilot's landing zone. The rescue was executed cleanly. The pilot, shaken, alive, minor injuries, was wheels up inside Iran before the IRGC ground response units could close to within 4 kilometers of the touchdown point. But the weapons systems officer, the man in the rear cockpit, was gone. His ejection seat had fired at a lower altitude at higher airspeed outside the standard safe envelope. The parachute deployed partially. The wind carried him off the ridgeline into a rugged mountain gorge 12 kilometers from the primary search area. His personnel locator beacon, the AN/PR-C112G, emitted 3 bursts, then went silent. Either the terrain had blocked the signal, or the battery had failed on the impact, or something far worse had happened. U.S. CENTCOM Search and Rescue Coordination Cell had a last known position, a 400-meter confidence circle in some of the most geographically hostile terrain in southwestern Iran, and then nothing. By 600 hours on April 3rd, Iranian state television had already broadcast what it claimed was wreckage of the F-15E, partial fuselage sections bearing the unmistakable tail flash of the 48th Fighter Wing. The IRGC issued a triumphant statement, and then the Islamic Republic activated something even more dangerous than its air defense grid: 90 million pairs of eyes. Every Iranian state media channel broadcast the same message on a loop. Anyone who located or captured American crew members would be rewarded by the government. A representative of local merchants in the Kogiluya region publicly pledged the equivalent of $60,000 for capture. Regional governors made personal appeals to farmers, shepherds, and hunters in the mountain villages. Iran was turning its entire civilian population into a distributed intelligence network, a human ISR blanket over 50,000 square kilometers of mountains, forests, and ravines. This was the scenario that no war game had fully modeled. The weapons systems officer was a lone, wounded American deep inside a hostile nation, hunted by a country. At 0915 hours, the second attempted Black Hawk extraction repositioned after new signals. Intelligence indicated a possible beacon contact, was met with small arms fire from IRGC militia units on the ridgeline. The MH-60M took multiple rounds through the fuselage and tailboom. No crew members were killed. The aircraft, the same helicopter that had just rescued the pilot hours earlier, absorbed the fire and continued flying, returning to base under its own power. But the message was clear. The terrain around the weapons systems officer was now contested, saturated with hostile forces. Any further extraction attempt would require air cover, deception, and something that only one U.S. agency could provide in time. The CIA was already moving. Inside a secured facility at the 379th Air Expeditionary Wing at Al Udeid Air Base, Qatar, a specialized SAD/SOG, Special Activities Division, Niner Special Operations Group, unit that is never mentioned in Pentagon briefings, activated a deception protocol that would later be described by a senior administration official as the ultimate needle in a haystack operation. The plan had 2 layers. Layer 1. The agency would feed deliberate disinformation into Iranian intelligence channels, spreading word through their human assets inside the IRGC that U.S. forces had already located the weapons systems officer and were maneuvering a ground exfiltration team southward toward the Khuzestan border. This would redirect IRGC QRF units away from the actual search area, buying hours that didn't exist. Layer 2 was what the official called unique capabilities, a classified ISR architecture that does not appear in any public inventory. Tasked against a single human being hiding in a mountain crevice in southwestern Iran, this system, likely a combination of signals intelligence, radio frequency detection, and imagery intelligence fused through a classified AI-enabled processing pipeline, began narrowing the confidence circle from 400 meters to 200 to 80 to 22. At 3:17 hours on April 5th, 34 hours after the shootdown, CIA transmitted precise coordinates to the Pentagon. The weapons systems officer was alive. He had crawled into a narrow rock crevice on a mountainside at an altitude of approximately 2,100 meters. He was wounded from the ejection sequence, but mobile. He had evaded every IRGC search team that had swept within 800 meters of his position by remaining completely still and using his survival suit to defeat thermal imaging. He was an American warrior performing the final act of his training, refusing to be taken. JSOC launched immediately. The operation was designated with a high volume of air cover. EA-18G Growlers from the USS George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group, operating at the extreme edge of their combat radius from the Persian Gulf, laid a wall of broadband electronic jamming across every IRGC communication frequency in the province. F-35Cs from VFA 147 Argonauts established a combat air patrol corridor at medium altitude, suppressing any mobile SAM system that attempted to acquire radar lock, and threading through the noise at low altitude, through mountain valleys that required night vision flying at less than 100 feet AGL. 2 MH-60Ms from the Night Stalkers inserted the rescue team with the precision of surgeons. The weapons systems officer heard them before he saw them. He activated his survival radio on the pre-briefed emergency frequency. The exchange lasted 11 seconds. 3 minutes later, he was being loaded onto the aircraft. The IRGC forces in the area, having been deceived into repositioning southward by the CIA disinformation campaign, were never within effective engagement range. At 4:02 hours on April 5, 2026, President Donald Trump posted confirmation to social media. Both crew members of the downed F-15E had been rescued. They were alive, they were safe, and they were American. The broader strategic picture is considerably more volatile than that four-word confirmation suggests. The United Arab Emirates, a nation operating some of the most sophisticated air defense infrastructure in the world, equipped with THAAD batteries, the Patriot PAC-3 MSE interceptors, and the indigenous Falcon Shield system, reported that in the 24 hours surrounding the F-15E shootdown, its air defense systems engaged 23 ballistic missiles and 56 drones launched by Iranian forces. Since the beginning of Operation Epic Fury in late February, UAE air defenses have fired on approximately 500 ballistic missiles, 23 cruise missiles, and more than 2,100 drones. The mathematics of attrition are stark. Iran, despite having much of its formal military leadership decapitated, is still generating an operationally significant volume of kinetic fire against U.S. partner nations throughout the Gulf. The IRGC's dispersed launch cells, pre-positioned, hardened, and operating under delegated authority, remain active. Their missiles and drones keep flying. The Strait of Hormuz, only the 33 nautical mile choke point through which 20% of the world's oil transits daily, remains effectively closed. Trump has issued a 48-hour ultimatum: reopen the strait or face consequences he described as hell. Iran's military has responded that the gates of hell will be opened upon you if its infrastructure continues to be struck. 13 American service members have been killed since the beginning of the campaign. 365 have been wounded. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, a venerable close air support platform not designed to survive against modern integrated air defense systems, was also downed on April 3rd in a separate engagement its pilot recovered. The last time a U.S. combat aircraft was downed in hostile fire before this week was an A-10 during the 2003 invasion of Iraq. That was 23 years ago. Yet the rules of this fight are being written in real time. Here is the uncomfortable truth that military planners must now absorb. Iran fought this war with two armies. The first was the formal IRGC and regular military, which has been systematically destroyed by U.S. and Israeli precision fires over 36 days of intensive campaign. The second army is decentralized, adaptive, and cannot be killed from the air. It consists of dispersed SAM launch teams operating rebuilt or previously concealed systems, drone swarm cells pre-positioned across a country the size of Alaska, and 90 million civilians who can be weaponized as intelligence assets with a single broadcast. The weapons systems officer survived not because of any failure of Iranian will, but because of American courage, CIA ingenuity, and 34 hours of extraordinary operational skill by a man alone in a mountain, executing his training with absolute discipline. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed. The 48-hour clock is ticking. The USS George H.W. Bush and its carrier strike group are repositioning. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers out of Whiteman Air Force Base have been tracked airborne on classified profiles. And somewhere inside a mountain range in southwestern Iran, an IRGC signals officer is uploading data from a captured F-15E's wreckage, looking for classified systems he can reverse engineer. What you are watching is not the end of this war. It may be the beginning of its most dangerous chapter. If Iran does not reopen the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, the United States has the capacity to execute a strike package that will make everything that has come before look like a rehearsal. The B-21 Raider has been declared operational. The Tomahawk Block 5, with its maritime strike variant capable of engaging surface combatants at ranges beyond 1,000 nautical miles, is loaded on every surface combatant in the 5th Fleet. And the Virginia-class submarines currently holding silent orbit beneath the Persian Gulf are carrying a combined payload of over 60 Tomahawk cruise missiles each, tasked against time-sensitive target packages that will execute the moment the launch order is authenticated. The question is not whether the United States can escalate. It can, catastrophically, irreversibly. Though the only question that matters in the 48 hours ahead is whether any authority inside Iran that still holds the levers of power will calculate that the price of keeping the strait closed is worth what comes next. Think carefully about what that means. A nation that just proved it can still shoot down an F-15E, the backbone of American tactical air power, is a nation that has not yet shown its full hand. Iran's advanced domestic air defense system was unveiled, in their own words, in real operational conditions. How many more systems exist that do not appear in any Western intelligence database? How many dispersed TELs are still operational in hardened positions the B-2S have not yet found? And what is the threshold and the precise moment of pressure at which a cornered Iran decides that the strait is not the only thing it can close? This is the most dangerous military situation on Earth right now. Every hour the clock moves forward without a diplomatic opening is another hour that the probability of a catastrophic exchange ratchets upward. The rescue of 2 brave Americans from the mountains of Iran was not a victory parade. It was a warning. A demonstration that even in its most degraded state, Iran can reach up and touch American air power. And a reminder that in modern multi-domain warfare, no one, not even the world's most powerful military, holds all the cards. Stay vigilant, stay informed, because the next 48 hours will define the trajectory of this conflict and potentially the global order that follows it.